I would like to now announce our next session. It is a dialogue on leadership and strategy in the age of disruption. I'll begin by introducing Dr. Amjad Waheed, Chief Executive Officer, NBP Funds. Sir, please join us on stage. Dr. Amjad is a seasoned financial expert with a wealth of experience in investments and finance. He holds a doctorate in business administration with a major in investments and finance from Southern Illinois University, USA, and is also a chartered financial analyst. Can we please have a round of applause for Dr. Amjad Waheed? Joining Dr. Amjad on stage is Mr. Zarar Khan, Group Chief Business Solutions Officer, PTCL Group. The largest ICT company in Pakistan, he has over 20 years of experience. Mr. Khan has held leadership roles in telecom giants like STC Kuwait, where he led 5G deployment. At PTCL, he oversees ICT portfolio development, wholesale connectivity, and Uphone's corporate division. Welcome on stage, sir. I would now like to invite Saqib Ahmed, Country Manager Director, SAP Pakistan, Iraq, Bahrain, and Afghanistan. Saqib, the Managing Director for SAP Pakistan, has nearly 24 years of experience in IT and telecommunications. Mr. Ahmed has significantly expanded SAP's presence in Pakistan, driving digital transformation and surpassing growth targets. Can we please have him on stage? Oh, okay, sorry. And over to you, gentlemen.
Much. Ladies and gentlemen, the topic today is about leadership, strategy, and age of disruption. अच्छा ये जो age of disruption है ना, this is a very, very interesting phenomena. And I call it as a phenomena. You know, if I see people in this room, how many of them are under 25 in this room? Can we raise hand? Under 25. Hardly 5 out over there. And if I go further and if we say how many of you are under 30, yeah, another 5. So think over, in this age of disruption, we have people in this room which are majority of them plus 30. And what we are talking about, age of disruption with them. Talk about the era, you know. We are the people, usually we have kids today who are on a middle age at this point of time. हम अक्सर डिस्कशंस में ये बात सुनते हैं कि यार हमारी जनरेशन तो बहुत अजीब सी जनरेशन है, क्योंकि हम हर वक्त अपने माँ बाप की भी सुनते थे और आज हम हर वक्त अपने बच्चों से भी सुनते हैं. And that's the kind of disruption that has happened in our daily life. Here we are not talking about disruption in technology. We are talking about that disruption in technology, what it has brought in our ecosystem, what it has brought in our social circle, it has brought in our social fabric. What we are talking about, the impacts on our day-to-day life when we are talking and connecting with people. What has happened on the religion and the culture that we are living in. When we talk about disruption, we are talking about our own core, what has happened. And you know, we have been challenged, we have been questioned, and we have been questioned on our core. Because the way this whole technological background is going to impact in our day-to-day lives, it's questioning us the way we are handling it. Sitting in a country like Pakistan, where the religion and culture has much more control in our day-to-day lives, and then the technology comes on top of that one, and we try to cover that technology and try to cover that base with that disruption that is bringing in our day-to-day homes as well. It's a difficult era. And we don't know what is right and what is wrong, because we don't know the impacts today. Let's be very clear, we are just going with the flow. What is happening and what technology is bringing, we are happy. Oh yeah, kuch time kam ho gaya. Koi access आसान हो गई. We are able to reach to the people more. Wow, that is something good. But what is it happening in our lives, in our social fabric, we are still not clear. We don't know what the impact that it is bringing into our next generation that we are looking today. There are some small impacts that we see. We see now the kids of 5 or 6 years age having a lot of glasses, nazar ki glasses lagti chali ja rahi hain. We are saying, yeah, it is just because due to the fact, because they are using the screens more. Today, when the kid of 6 months old start using the mobile, we feel, wow, look at this kid, 6 months old, he's able to use the screen. What is the impact that is going to bring into the next generation? We are leaving that thing away because there is a leadership that a mother or a father that brings on that child, which will remain going to with him or her over the period of next 50, 60, 70 years. We have given it to that screen. That's a disruption. And we don't know if this disruption is going to impact again our culture. There is a big debate overall. Is the culture is driven by the religion, or the religion is driven and taking out a lot from the culture? And then there is another debate on top of that. How the technology is driving away the complete religious and cultural backgrounds as well. हम बहुत सी ऐसी चीजें जो हमारे सोशो इकोनॉमिकल नॉर्म्स के अंदर एक्सेप्टेबल नहीं थी, आज हमने उनको एक्सेप्ट करना शुरू कर दिया, बिकॉज द एज ऑफ डिस्ट्रप्शन इज कमिंग and it is questioning our leadership. This is leadership being questioned in our homes as parents and kids. This leadership is being questioned in our offices, where a young guy comes in and questions the way you have done your leadership over the period of 20 years, and he questions you, was it right? Or the norms through which you have achieved success. He is questioning that the modes of this disruption are changing so fast. Are we really doing it right? This is the discussion today in a dinner table. This is a discussion today in a group of friends sitting over our era and asking each other, am I doing something right? Am I doing something wrong? And that's the discussion today, ladies and gentlemen. And we have two very esteemed panelists over here. And let me start first, sir, with you. PTCL is a historical institution, let me say. It was there for a very long time, and it has been part of the journey of the change in trends that has happened over a period of time. Mm-hmm. How do you feel that is PTCL ready today, along with this age of disruption, and providing the right set of tools to the people to make the right decision?
True. Thank you, Saqib. I think if you look at the history of PTCL, and you started by quoting our history, so let me give you a short-term background to it. So PTCL was, it started its operation on the 15th of August, 1947. The head of PTCL was the fourth appointment in Pakistan after the Governor General and the Governor of State Bank of Pakistan and the head of Supreme Court. So I think if we look into our legacy, I think our founding fathers somehow understood the role. At that time, there was no telephone. It was basically post and telegraph that was going to play. Like a lot of other companies of the world, we were state-owned. Until I think the technology actually started to hit us at an era when the internet started, which was basically late 80s, early 90s. I think this was the time when I started to, if you start to see that, how Pakistan started to adopt the technology. So we had our initial years, which was from 1947 to 1952, 1953 onwards to almost till 1975. These were our golden years. These were the years where if you take up any industry of Pakistan, that was flourishing very, very well. Post 1975, this was the era when the third industrial revolution started. Chipset manufacturing became thing, and this was the time when we think that Pakistan as a nation and all its institutions, ourselves included, started to move away a little bit. But I think that the pace of disruption at that time was very slow. So we never realized it. The realization started to come in post 1991. And the biggest impact that we had, which I think that we failed to realize, and some of our neighboring countries, specifically India, really capitalized on, was that in the third industrial revolution, education was one of the primary drivers of enablement of disruption, but also making sure that we can benefit from that disruption. 1991, while the focus for, and I don't know if I should always be quoting India, but I think it is an example. It's the third largest economy in the world now. They started to focus on making sure that their education system is the best in the world. While in our case, starting from mid-80s, we started to see that our education system was marred by a lot of other factors, whether it was politicizing, whether it was the role of religion getting imparted into certain areas, whether it was the curriculum not keeping pace with a lot of factors. So 1991 onwards was the time when we started to see a shift of Pakistan moving away from where the rest of the world was going. And I think moving into that direction, we started to see a couple of things of what is the role that technology plays or the disruption of technology plays in the greater ecosystem and the greater things. I think one of the things which is I saw was that we as a nation have this habit of lingering on to our past very, very strongly. I think what we see even today, and I think right now if you see whether it is economically, politically, or by any other ways, we are going through one of the toughest times that we have gone in the last 76 years. But still, if you talk to an average person, especially people who are above the age of 25, we are still stuck in our glorious past. And you would start to come across, and we are always giving examples of what we did and where we were, and then there was this great conspiracy against it and everything, and that is somehow divorcing us from the harsh realities that we have right now. I think in the previous panel, there was a discussion on the youth bulge. And everybody is looking at youth bulge as an opportunity. I think one of the biggest problems that we have right now is nobody from that youth bulge wants to stay in Pakistan. And I think what are we as a society and we as PTCL doing to make sure that we enable them, that we give them the opportunities to stay in. So PTCL for us, we had gone through 3 phases. The first was the formative phase. The second phase that we had, which includes our privatization, was the phase in which we were trying to find our direction into the greater national narrative of, let's say, technological disruption. We have entered post-2020 into our third phase. And I think this is the phase which is the most defining for us as an organization, but also the most defining for us as a nation. We are now entering the 4th industrial revolution. And whenever there is an industrial revolution, what it does is that it rewrites the norms of the society. The 3rd industrial revolution started with the disruption of the family structure. I mean, all the industrialized nations, one of the things that had happened was that the family structure started to get disrupted. Pakistan was a late entrant, but our family structure has also started to get disrupted. For example, ever since the smartphones have come into our households, you would start to see that the interaction of the parents with their kids or the kids with their siblings has gone down drastically. I mean, I can talk about my own home. If my kids are not playing on their PlayStations or they're not reading books on their, let's say, Kindle, or they're not playing with their phones, the interaction that my kids have with their peers have gone down significantly. However, what we need to do is that within the 4th industrial revolution, we need to make sure that how are we going to equip ourselves as PTCL to do a disruption, and that would be done on 3 areas, very briefly. The first one is that a successful society is a connected society, and connectivity has 2 forms, wireless and wired. So while there is a lot of focus happening on 3G, 4G, 5G and everything, the key determinant is the wired communication. Still, the number of households connected over fiber are in low single digits. The second thing is that whether you talk of artificial intelligence or machine learning, or you're going to talk about things like deep analytics, they are being run on cloud infrastructure. Pakistan cloud infrastructure today is very, very nascent. And if we want to play our part, we need to make sure that we invest in both having the infrastructure as well as the capability to deliver. Number three is that the world after AI is moving beyond software development. I think one of the challenges that we see that every year we are talking about how much our software exports are. I can assure you within the next 5 years, the landscape of software export are going to be changed. We really need to see that what are the new dimensions of technology that are being driven by disruption. And from our side, when it comes to human enablement, especially in support of the government, we are taking a lot of initiative, because if we do not do that as not only a single institution, but as a society at large, we will be left with a 62% youth bulge that does not possess the capability to succeed individually and also as a nation.
You raised some important points out over there, and one of the important points is about disruption, especially talking about a digital footprint. You know, whatever we do today, and if we go back to the nation, the generation behind us, they did things, they had the history, but that history is not recorded. But today, whatever we do, or a comment that we give on our social media, or a viewpoint that we give, is a recorded digital footprint that we are creating on somewhere on the social media, and that is being recorded. And that record will come back 10 years down the road when you will be talking about your point of view, and somebody will challenge you out over there in that disruption of era and say, you had this point of view at that point of time, and now you are changing your narrative from there. We are making clear digital footprints that is present all over the period of time. And that is going to question our integrity in this age of disruption that we are talking about. I'm just linking this background to the question over here. We are talking a lot on this, that what is the impact of this disruption in the leadership and strategy. How do you see these tools are going to impact our integrity, and how that integrity will be questioned out with time, especially in this age of disruption when we're talking about with these AIs and the things coming up over there? Will the human factor still be important out over there, which comes with an empathy and integrity, or the machines are going to take over completely?
Well, you see, the real disruption, is beyond or bigger than technological disruption, and that is the mindset disruption. And I think, unfortunately, the way things have moved over the years, a rule of law, as you know, in Pakistan, abiding by the constitution, and general, basically, empathy for the people of the country. I mean, if you look at how much the government invests in the people, okay, if you look at education, for example, we used to spend 2% of GDP, now we are spending 1.5% of GDP on education. India spends more than 4% of GDP on education. Okay, so a lot has to start with, how you bring up your young generation that we are talking about, the youth bulge you talk about. But as I think Arshad also mentioned in the previous session, that out of 50 million children, 25 million children are not going to school at all. So what type of education they are getting, then, or what type of tarbiyat that they're getting, out there on the streets. Then out of the remaining 25 million children, about 15 million children are going to government schools where a 5-year-old cannot read a sentence in Urdu. So only 10 million children out of 15 million which are going to private school, including the low-cost private schools with a fee of 2,000 rupees per month, are getting some level of education. So all of this, so I think that basically, I think that contract between the state and the society, I see, we see that, over the years, it's going down. And the state has not, in terms of basic education, in terms of basic healthcare, in terms of clean drinking water, in terms of providing basic municipal facilities, those have been lacking. And it has an impact where, unfortunately, corruption, actually, and when the rule of law is not abided, at the top, then it's not abided at the bottom. If might is right on the top, then might is right at the bottom as well. So it has actually triggered, in my view, from top to bottom, where now, you talk about integrity. I think a lot of society now has accepted the norms of corruption, or subtype of, wherever they can do something and get away with it. So I think uh, what, in my view, is needed is basically a mindset change from starting from the top and then basically bringing it down. I think when we talk about national security, I think it has been defined very narrowly in Pakistan in terms of military security. National security is a lot more than military security. It includes food security, human security, and we talked about, education and healthcare, and we talked about climate security, energy security, economic security. So the security of a country has various aspects. So in my view, when we talk about disruption, I think it has to start even before technological disruption. It has to start with mindset disruption, and so the whole mindset of the nation has to be changed. As I think Zarar mentioned, we live in the past rather than looking at the future. So I think uh, that's where we need to go back to. And I think a couple of years ago, the government came out with the national security policy, a first one in my view, and which talked about that the security of a nation is as good as the security of the most vulnerable citizen of that state. So I think that's where we need to go at.
I think you raised an important point over here. That's when this era of disruption, we need to first of all understand and change ourselves. And when I say we have to change ourselves, the point, if we go to the generation behind us, the one that we are talking about, and you highlighted about, we are always talking about their laurels. I think one thing that has changed over the period of time, that generation was doing the same thing repeatedly over the period of time, and they were made the champions, and they were doing it in the best possible way. So there was a certain job that was being done over the period of time for 15, 20 years, and then they were the best in doing it. In our generation of today, that's not the case, because we are not repeating the same work today. We are being asked and questioned to change after every 3 to 4 years and come with the technology and the new era, because if we are not going to change ourselves, this disruption will take us away. And that's a reality. And that is not age dependent. If you see today how many 50 plus people are leading the organizations, you will see the number is getting less. And rather the young generation is taking the leadership positions more. And that is why, because what they are seeing is that the change and the disruption is coming so fast that we need the leadership who can adapt to this change, who can go around and make it fast, adopt, and also implement it, that one as well. And that's what is expected out of this generation as of today as well. Zarar, coming back to you, how as a Pakistani nation, we should handle this age of disruption? What are the 3 things that we need to do and implement now to handle it in the best possible way?
I think the first thing that we have to do, so there's this book by Alvin Toffler called Future Shock. And I was very lucky when I went to the universities. We had a course, so we had to learn English. And a professor for English at that time, he said, look, a lot of you do know English. So I want to teach you sociology. And then our course book was this book by Alvin Toffler called Future Shock. And it had a statement which said that the illiterate of today are not the ones who don't learn, but the ones who don't learn, unlearn, and relearn. So I think in this era of disruption, the first thing that we have to do if we need to be successful is to unlearn. Because I think one of the biggest problems that we are beset with as a society in Pakistan is the fact that disruption is hitting us on our face while we are set in our existing methods. And we see it every single day. We are using old solutions to problems where they are very, very different. Now, if we agree as a society that we are going to unlearn so that we can understand the challenges and the opportunities that we have, so that we can write a new, whether it's a technology contract or a social contract or an economic contract, the next step that we really need to bring in is that we need to understand what our biggest assets are. I think a lot of times, probably this is a little bit out there, is that we start to talk about our youth and we talk about it that this is our biggest asset. And whenever I hear it in every single conference that you talk to, we talk about the potential of our youth. The question is, how is our youth our biggest asset in an era where artificial intelligence is driving all mechanical sort of things? And once you start to ask these pointed questions that define the role of youth, that is youth really an asset or is our youth a liability? Because within 20 years, people who are 25 are going to go to the age of 45 and then they're going to decline. The second thing I think that we really need to see is that if we define the role of youth today, because if we say that the youth is going to be the people who are not going to be the masons, they are not the ones who are going to be semi-skilled laborers or the ones who are involved in the agriculture sector. What are we going to use our youth for, which in the short term, they can sustain for themselves, and number two, they can provide productivity at a national level that we can monetize? This question needs to be answered. And this question to this date is not answered. We just give these high-level, superficial sort of statements like youth and enablement of youth. Today, if I ask you what has failed in the last 30 years that we have been unable to educate our children, that we are going to miraculously change within the next 5 years and our youth is going to be enabled, there is some fundamental problems that we have been unable to resolve despite all the technology and a lot of monetary support coming to us. That is, I think, the area number one that we need to see in this era of disruption. The second thing is that there was a bipolar world, and then it became globalized, and again it is going to become into a multipolar world, where every pole is going to have an era of specialization. And I think if you look at the 1500s, I think the 2100s are going to be closer to the 1500s rather than the 1900s, and I will tell you why. If you look at the 1500, the global social order and the economic orders, there were nation states that owned certain parts which was their value. Like, for example, you would have areas that were seafaring, like, for example, Portugal. Then there were areas that were very strong on the agriculture side, and they were the food baskets of the world, like, for example, Egypt and India. Then there were areas that were driving, technology and advancements and everything, which was, of course, the era of enlightenment of Europe. Same things are going to be happening in the next 30 years. What we really need to understand is that we cannot be a one-size-fits-all. And we cannot have our mindset which is adopted to a unipolar world. We need to see what is the vertical that we are able to do it. Once we set up this, whatever is the Pakistan 2047 strategy is, and I think it's very sad we don't talk about Pakistan 2047 a lot. This was a strategy that was written in the 1990s. And it was not updated. It has just become a fad. I think every single one of us who are in this room and outside, we need to read the vision Pakistan 2047. We need to add to that vision, and we need to question that vision with our leadership. Thank you.
Good. I think you have talked about the mantra of learn, unlearn, and relearn. And that the more we repeat it, better it is. Because that is the mantra that is going to change us in that direction. I think one point that you also highlighted, and I will also highlight to the management of Nutshell as well. In every of the sessions since yesterday, I think there is not a single session that has gone without the mentioning of 62% of our youth, that our population is 62% less than this. But I think on the stage, we are missing that youth. So I believe in such a session, if we can get two young people also on the stage, and listen to their mantra, I think that will also change the game for us because we want to give them the stage as well. Sir, coming back to you as a last question of the session, somehow this word disruption, even from my intro, sounded as something negative. But the disruption is not necessarily negative as well. Disruption is positive as well. So what is the positive disruption that you see for Pakistan in this technological era? And what is the impact of that positive disruption on the people of Pakistan?
Yeah, I think first of all, as you know, companies have a vision, and some companies have vision for even the next 500 years. I think first of all, Pakistan needs to have a vision. I think we lack a vision statement, and there's so much different discussion. I don't want to say what people say, but I think that we need to have a clear vision. And in my view, a simple vision statement is, progress and prosperity of the people of Pakistan. So I think we've been too much outward looking. We need to be inward looking and focus on progress and prosperity, and focus on this youth bulge. And as we earlier talked about that, 80% of this youth bulge is not even educated. Okay, so Pakistan's education car is running on one tire. But I think in Pakistan, a lot of disruption needs to take place. I think the status quo cannot continue. We have reached a stage where I think we all realize that we have been left far behind even India and Bangladesh, which at one time were part of the subcontinent. So I think in terms of the role of the state, I think it's very critical. The state has expanded itself too much. Look at state-owned enterprises. The subsidies and grants of state-owned enterprises are about 1.5 trillion rupees that the taxpayers are paying. That's $5 billion. So for a country which has reserves of $8 billion, the subsidies and grants to state-owned enterprises are $5 billion. It's just not sustainable. We need to privatize all these state-owned enterprises and use that money that we get from privatization to reduce our debt, which has now become unsustainable. Once these state-owned enterprises are privatized, we will see automatic improvement in efficiencies in these organizations, more professionalism coming in, more technology coming in, and that is going to drive a lot of things. Also, the centralized controlled government, that system has gone. The entire world has gone to local governments. Look at China, US, Turkey, India. Governance is best close to the home. So I think it's time that we dissolve those administrative and financial powers down to the local government level, where, in a Mahalla system that we have, common citizen can go to the Mahalla counselor and say, there's no teacher in the school where my kid is going, or there is no medicine in the dispensary, where I'm taking my daughter, or my road is broken, but I think he has no access to a bureaucrat sitting in Islamabad or in Karachi. So I think the local government system is very important. The civil and military bureaucracy, I think, is too big for the size of the government. We need to reduce that. And we need to bring in professionals in the government, I think very critical to basically improve the governance of the country. So a lot of these changes, a lot of these disruptions are important for us to move forward.
Thank you very much, sir. I think we have talked about disruptions. We have talked about their impacts on our lives. But let's, coming back from this discussion to you as individuals, we are the owner of these disruptions. We are the ones who needs to drive them in the right direction. Since yesterday, there is a lot of discussion about what the government and the government institutions has to do to make an impact and make the change in this country. But let's be very honest, people sitting in this room and people who are listening over on all the social media channels, they carry a responsibility also. They carry a responsibility of managing this disruption that you are talking about. All of us needs to own what this country asks us to do. We cannot just put it on some state and say, They are the 90% owners of that one and we are the 10% users of that one. That's not going to work. And that's something that we need to come up and say, we own it. You know, we all talk about in this age of error and disruption in technology, यार टैक्स बेस को ज्यादा होना चाहिए. And whose responsibility is it? ये government का काम है. Is it not our responsibility to pay our taxes as well and to see that why this country needs it also? Is it not something that we need to own on our place and see in our ecosystem who are the people who wants to give back to this country? If we want to make an impact of such a session or such an event, if we are able to get something out of that, that one change that I can bring, that is a disruption that this country and this people needs. That's the impact that we need. The people sitting on the stage will do what they have to do, but it's us sitting on the other side of the table who have to own the responsibility and make an impact. That is the impact that will change this country. Otherwise, these sessions will continue, but the impacts will not come. And that's where we need to own this one as well. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for this one. And I hope we are able to make one change and one disruption, positive disruption in our lives coming out of this session as well. Thank you very much.